Hi, Todd VanDenburg here with VanDenburg Capital Management and another Uncommon Sense update. So here we are, it's 2020. Happy New Year, everybody. Hard to believe it's a new decade. It seems like yesterday we were all worried about Y2K, but I digress. 2019 was a pretty good year by any measurable standard. When the year started off, we had set expectations that we thought the Dow could finish the year at about 28,500. And the markets were incredibly volatile all year long, but they did finish at 28,553. So we're pretty happy that the markets actually ultimately did what the math said they could do. So now the question is, where do we think the markets will be by the end of 2020? And that number is, wait for it, 31,000 on the Dow. So I know that sounds like a really big number. How could we ever get to 31,000? But when you look at our economy, when you look at unemployment, when you look at GDP growth rate, yes, there are some things to worry about. It is an election year. We've got some Middle East turmoil, sort of rearing its ugly head again. But economically, the U.S. is an incredibly strong country. There's no sign of recession. So it's 31,000 on the Dow. Now, as data changes throughout the year, we may modify that number, but unless something really unexpected happens, that's the number we're going to stick with. But that's not what I wanted to talk about today. What I wanted to talk about today are some new changes to the way IRAs are treated that were implemented as part of what was called the Secure Act, was passed at the end of 2019. Now, the Secure Act has quite a few things in it that are different, but I'm only going to focus on two today. And the first one has to do with what are called required minimum distributions. Now, prior to 2020, in the year that you turned 70 and a half, you had to start taking minimum distributions from your IRA. Well, effective 2020, that number is now 72. So if you had turned 70 and a half in 2019 or earlier, you have to keep taking minimum distributions. But if you hadn't turned 70 and a half, you now get to wait until the year that you turn 72. So for a lot of people that don't need distributions from their IRAs, those accounts now get to continue to grow tax deferred for another year and a half or so. The other change that is important is going to impact quite a few more people. And that is something of a concept called a stretch IRA. So prior to this year, prior to the Secure Act, you could name your child or anybody as a beneficiary. And, typically those people are younger. Let's say it was your child. And when you passed away, even if you were taking minimum distributions, your child would inherit that IRA, and then they could start taking those distributions based upon their life expectancy. And what that meant is that they would be forced to take a smaller amount out, which would allow that account to continue to grow or stretch over their lifetime. Well, effective 2020, the Secure Act has changed that rule completely. The new rule is you have to have that IRA account drained within 10 years after the passing of the owner. Now, from a taxation standpoint, for the owner, this is a non-event. But for the person who's inheriting it, it can be a pretty big event. And I got a couple of examples. Let's look at somebody who makes $50,000 a year. Under the old rule, they would have to take out, depending on their age, let's say 3%. So, at 3%, they would take a smaller amount out of the IRA. Let's call it $1 million IRA. They'd take a smaller amount out, and it was taxed at their marginal tax rate, which is 22%. Under the new rule, they wouldn't get to take that small amount out. They'd have to take out like $100,000 out of that IRA. So some of the money that they took out would be taxed at their current marginal tax rate of 22%, but a chunk of it would be taxed at the next higher marginal tax rate, which is 24%. So what that means is that you just went from having a $1 million IRA down to you now have maybe $70,000 in your pocket, because if you took a $100,000 distribution, but you sent $30,000 to the federal government, and depending on what state you live in, you're going to be sending even more. This problem gets even worse. Let's say if the person who inherits the IRA is making $100,000 a year. So their marginal tax bracket is already 24%. So under the old rules, yes, they would take a 3% distribution, or around 30 grand. And that would be taxed at their marginal tax rate. Under the new rule, that $100,000 that they have to take out, a chunk of it is taxed at their current marginal tax bracket, 24%, but another chunk is taxed at the next higher marginal tax bracket, and that's 32%. So what you see here is that what the government's doing is it's forcing people who are non-spouses to take this money out and pay their tax bills, and it's going to have a pretty big impact on the amount of after-tax money that the beneficiaries are going to be receiving. So we don't like this change very much, and that's why we're spending quite a bit of time right now doing some analysis to come up with maybe some strategies that the current owner of the IRA can try to take action on, to try to make it so that after they're done using their IRA to live the life they want to in retirement, that they leave the greatest possible after-tax benefit to their beneficiaries. Because, we don't mind paying our taxes, but there's no sense giving the government money that we don't have to if we can structure these investments and these accounts in ways that minimize the amount of money that we have to give the government. So if anybody has any questions about the Secure Act or the two items that I just talked about just now, please give us a call, send us an email, reply to this video. I'll happily answer any questions you might have. But the changes here, and if we don't do something about some of these changes, a lot of your hard-earned money could end up going to the government that you didn't necessarily want to give to them. So that was your update. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, give us a like, give us a share, and I'll be back next week with another Uncommon Sense update. Thanks for watching. If you'd like to be the first to hear of more Uncommon Sense updates like these, please click the subscribe button below. We'd really appreciate it. Thanks again.